Owen. How's it going? How are you?
Going great, Shilpa. How are you?
Great. So, yeah, people are always fascinated with behind the scenes, and everyone wants to make movies, and we're lucky enough to be able to do it. So, I thought I'll give our fans a little insight into the whole process. So, tell us where you grew up.
I grew up in New York City on the Upper West Side. I was born in 1981, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s in New York City. It was a slightly different time for New York, but it's a city that never stays the same for very long, so it's always changing. So,
And so, what kinds of things influenced you to get into working behind the camera?
I kind of got into filmmaking to tell stories. I liked telling stories in writing, and I got into it, and I've always been kind of a geek for technology and stuff like that. So camera was a natural place for me to gravitate towards. I did a little bit of film studies in college, kind of for fun, and I, had taken black and white film, photography courses as a kid. So I wasn't unfamiliar with the technology. I just wasn't, I didn't have a reel. I didn't go to film school. I didn't, go to AFI or anything like that. So I started as a production assistant, and I've been in the industry for 17 years, and now I'm a director of photography. So, you just kind of work your way up, and you don't quit because it's hard. It's a hard road. Really fun.
So then how did you learn all your skills?
Just working with other people. I took a few courses here and there. The Main Media College is a wonderful place to go and take intensive courses. I took like a lighting course and a camera assistant course and tried a couple of different things. But really, I just learned from the people I worked with. If you find people who are willing to mentor you, who you get along with, the film is a very social business, so stick with them. Do them favors, learn from them, absorb it. I worked in a lot of different areas. I actually started out in reality TV, and then I went from that into narrative as an assistant, and then I moved into narrative and documentary as a director of photography. But I learned, everything from back focusing and ENG lens to, how to light an interview to, how to work with a director, really through osmosis, really by absorbing it from people. And then there's a certain degree to which you just have to do it, right? So like you might not know everything, but you just have to say, okay, I'm going to go shoot something. And your first things are, unless you're really lucky, you're not going to be your best. And that's how you learn. And you just always try to give it, 110%. And if your heart and your energy is in the right place, then I think you kind of get where you need to go.
And what was the difference between reality and then shooting narrative?
Well, reality was terrible. It was a good place to get in because, I don't mean to, I have a lot of friends who still do it. It was a good place to make a break in. I started as a production assistant in commercials, and then I ended up becoming an AC in reality. And also documentary nonfiction, but a lot of it was reality, like competition cooking shows and stuff like that. You needed so many cameras that it was easy to say, hey, I'm a PA, but you've got 5 cameras and camera assistants. Can I help out?
Yeah.
They'll teach you how to charge the batteries and how to, we used tape at the time. God, I feel like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
But like, how to take, charge of labeling and keeping the tape safe and all that kind of stuff. And then you get into more complicated things like dealing with the lenses and dealing with the optics and dealing with the wireless signals and how to set up the monitors and making sure everything's work, all the technical stuff. And I kind of did that for a while until I sort of learned everything. Yeah. And I had this kind of moment, I looked up from what I was doing. I was doing all this complicated camera stuff. And I was like, oh, this show is terrible. I don't like this. I don't like the shows I'm making. So I made a very concerted effort to move into narrative film. And I joined the union, and I just started making friends with anybody I could who was in the union, and kind of transitioned into that for a long time.
How did you get into the union? Because that's also hard to do.
There's 2 ways to get in as an assistant. Well, first, you have to save up some money. So there's an initiation fee, and then you have to pay your dues. So there's an economic part to it. You can take a test and you can enter as an assistant usually you classify it as a loader to start. That's the sort of lowest level of camera assistant in the camera union. There's obviously other unions you can go into.
Nowadays, I heard they're having trouble even finding film loaders because that skill isn't taught anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the sunset of film, so I loaded a couple mags. I dealt with a couple film projects. I actually pulled focus on a couple film projects, and luckily they were all in focus, so that was great. It's not a dead art, but most of the people who are really good at it have been doing it for a while, and the young people who have done it have made it specific purpose to be like, I want to know film, I want to do film. I have mixed feelings about film. I think it's the most beautiful medium we've got. I also find it extremely difficult as a workflow. So yeah, I'm okay with digital. I'm okay losing quality for the ease of digital, but
Yeah.
that's just me. Everybody makes their own decisions. And if someone said, hey, I want to shoot film, I would say, hey, this is fun, let's do it. So how I got in the union, I had enough days as a camera assistant on my time cards from different things, and I could present it. And they said, okay, you've worked as a camera assistant, pay your initiation fee, and add you to the union. The other way to do it is to take the test, pay the initiation fee, and be in it. You have to pass the test, you have to train for it. So I avoided that step, which was not a great idea, actually, because you meet people in those classes. And the thing about the union, at least the camera union, they don't find you any work. They don't have a hall for hiring. So you have to go out and, like a lot of film work, kind of be a self-starter and go for it yourself. And obviously, as you meet people, those people give you connections, and that's how your first work comes along. So I actually encourage people to take the test and do it. I didn't know at the time, but it's a social business, like I said, and you just have to kind of keep making friends, keep being pleasant, And if you're not happy on set, and you need to kind of figure out why, because people aren't going to hire you if you're grumpy and upset.
Right.
Like, you don't want to work with you.
Unless you're the sound guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I try not to hire the sound guys who are, but
Yeah, you have to be a team player, and you're going to be there all day. So
you're going to be there for 12 hours. The people you're working with for 5 or 6 days a week are going to be your family at the end. So you got to treat your family. You know what I mean?
And nowadays, for people who are just starting out, the RE new office has monthly happy hours and stuff, so you can go and get on their mailing list and meet people.
When you're just starting, I miss a lot of that stuff because I live in Westchester now with a house and kids. But those events are so important. It's really to go and schmooze, but be humble, go make friends, be honest. I think a lot of people are afraid to admit that they don't know stuff.
Yeah.
So one of these events and everyone's like, oh, I work on Spider-Man, and the other person's like, I've never done a film job. But right. You'd be surprised how generous people in the film industry are, especially to beginners, because we've all been there, all had to start from scratch. And so, I always try to pay it forward. And anybody who comes to me, like a alumni of my college or anybody who wants, to learn or help, I try to help them because I needed help from people above me when I was starting out. So
how did you get into multicam and single cam?
You mean like when we're shooting narrative, 2 cams or 3 cams? Well, I love shooting 1 camera because you only have to focus and light and laser focus on 1 frame. And I think it's a little cleaner, but multiple cams is great. A lot of these big TV shows, you have to work with 3, 4, 5 cameras, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It can be 2 or 3 cameras on a scene generally, and then you can have, if you're doing special effects or a big scene, you can have tons of cameras just trying to get the actions. I can work with a lot of cameras, but in narrative stuff, I can manage 3 or 4 cameras at the same time somehow. My brain can do it, but in narrative, I prefer to keep it as minimal as possible.
Yeah. I worked on post on Spike Lee's Bamboozled, so I was logging the tapes that came in, and they were shooting a lot of dance numbers and performance scenes. So one had 12 camera setups, and that was when digital just started. Mm-hmm. And so for this project, I was shooting Hufina's talk, and we only had 3 hours with Lily Singh, who was there for Fashion Week. So we shoot sketches and interview and man on the street stuff. For that, we had 2 cameras. So that's when I was like, oh, I have this script and we have a lot of kids, so we're going to have to do half days so we can get our coverage if we do 2 cameras
Yeah.
Yeah.
Halloween, we had 3 cameras sometimes, right? Yeah. Yeah, I worked on a Spike Lee live show. I think it was the Mike Tyson show.
Oh yeah.
And there were 12 or 14 cameras.
Yeah.
It was insane. Spike is a great guy, but he likes a lot of cameras. He also has a really amazing team that works with him kind of on every show. But yeah, Diwal'Oween, we had a couple cameras. Sometimes we had splinter units. Like I was working like a second unit doing something, and Ari was doing something else, and Aitor was sometimes doing something else. So, it was a adventure. A good team doing a lot of different things. I met Giovanni Silva on that job, who is is still my gaffer. Love that.
Nice.
Yeah, so you make friends and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
he's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's a wonderful human being.
And then also I learned if you're doing comedy, everyone should have a sense of humor. So
yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that, comedy versus drama?
I've done more dramas than comedy, but I just shot something with Amy Sedaris this year. That was a comedy. I also spent 4 years as a second AC on Inside Amy Schumer. It's funny how serious shooting comedy is.
Yeah.
Everybody laughs on set. It's great. I really do love the vibe because you're shooting something funny, and sometimes you have to like hold it together.
Right.
Getting this really tight shot. And someone makes an insanely funny joke, and you have to not ruin the shot by laughing. Just like the actors can't break, the camera can't break. That kind of you kind of can't laugh, but you do shoot the same joke 80 times, so it stops being funny. You have to make it through the day. So you want people who are funny, you want people who have a good personality, you want to have a really good vibe. It's a different vibe. Like doing drama, it's a little more hushed, a little more careful. You're really like protecting people's performances, especially if they're emotional, try not to bug them with unnecessary stuff. It's less precious like that in comedy, but still, you have to be work hard,
Comedy actors are trying to get a laugh out of the crew, so like they keep trying something new.
That is actually the weirdest part about comedy is everyone is so hushed and silent, and people in comedy are not used to working to an empty audience, and they'll be like, they'll look to you for a confirmation, like, was that good?
Right.
So often if I'm operating the camera or I'm nearby as a DP, I give them a big smile, thumbs up, but I'm not going to laugh. I'm not going to ruin the audio, I'm not going to ruin, so you do have to give them feedback and make them feel confident. I'm not the director. I'm not in the place to sort of adjust performances or things like that. I'll tell people to hit their mark or lean towards the light or something like that. If it's a small project, it's nice to give a little bit of input, but I made a conscious decision. I didn't really want to direct. I'd rather direct the photography.
Yeah.
So I try to stay out of that side of the story,
Keep a low profile, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, so for this car scene, we had shot it single camera, but there was a lot of continuity problems. I could see my jacket in the trunk in some shots.
Yeah. Well, that was a hard day. That was a hard day.
I looked into fixing it in post, and that was way more expensive than just reshooting it. So then I looked at Key and Peele, some car scenes from that, and High Anxiety with Mel Brooks. So that's something where like he took these Hitchcock type of lighting situations, but he's very funny and the situation was very funny. So, that's a good sample. And then I had a shot list, then that we converted that into a multicam shooting simultaneously with 2 or 3 cameras.
I think it was 3. I think we had 3 mirrorless cameras running at the same time.
And then at one point, Mr. Robot was doing GoPros, so we were talking about that, but then we decided to come back to the regular camera.
Yeah, I think GoPros are great for specific look and a specific shot. For actually filming faces, I don't think their fidelity and they're they are so wide. They're a hard thing to get. If you're shooting someone doing a crazy trick off a snowboard jump, they're great, but I don't know.
Right.
Not my favorite for human faces. So yeah, this was a situation where we needed to do multi-camera because is so difficult. You're in a car with 2 people talking, and there's a lot of continuity issues of going through tunnels, light. So when you cut it, you have to make sure if they're both going through a tunnel, that it happens at the same time.
Right.
So it was pretty obvious to me that we needed to do multi-cameras, but to do 3 or 4 cameras in a moving car can be a lot, right? Like you could get it. I don't know, for the audience, I don't know, but there's something called a process trailer. And so they'll often hook the car basically like a flatbed truck. And from that flatbed truck, you can rig lights, you can rig cameras, you can go all around with all different angles, and you can repeat the same motion. That's extraordinarily expensive and complicated. It requires people to block traffic. It requires all this. And we just, didn't have those resources. So I said, all right, how are we going to do this in a real moving car? And so I came up with the thought, we'll do on these Sony mirrorless cameras that just get better every year. I guess we used A7 IIIs at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know analog, or if we didn't, I think we might have just baked in the look and just kind of kept them consistent. But we got these magnetic mounts. I think they're called rig wheels. And I don't know if you remember, but like you put the magnet on one side of the glass and you slide on the other. And we mounted the cameras like with these magnets, these light cameras. And I think we had 2 angles on Manveer and 1 angle hiding behind the back in the car on our other character. So, we were able to, when Manveer and Swan were having a conversation, you could literally cut between the performances or cut between.
Yeah.
We did do a similar thing, is that I think we went around on the same loop.
I wanted him to be creepy under the tunnels, so he was in most darkness, and we actually sold it to the audience that way. It was.
Yeah, I think that worked. We didn't have the capability, to tent the car and then rig big lights and do these things that you do on a process trailer. So what I did is, and actually we got a little fortunate in that it was a foggy, kind of rainy day. So we had soft light and we weren't dealing with really hard light and hard shadows. Rigged a little light mat, I think, behind the seat that was at a low angle, and it was back operated. And so it gave
It's very creepy.
Yeah, it also lit him nicely in the daytime, and then when we hit these tunnels, he had that up like scary campfire light, which was a nice effect, and I was really happy. The technology is amazing that exists, that you can now shoot 3 cameras in a moving car and light it, all battery operated.
Right.
Monitor it, and you were hiding in the trunk with 3 monitors that were wireless transmitting from the A7. The amount of technology that we had doing something that could cost so much more money.
Right.
Nice man, hold on. And I think, we had these small HD focus bolts, so we had these monitors powering the camera, so they would go longer, but they were also sending you a signal, kind of wedged in the corner of the windows, and you were in the back with 3 monitors. I think we just used like Rokinon primes, so they looked, prime lenses, so it looked kind of nice. Tried to have it shallow, but not too shallow, because obviously they were going to move. And there was nobody to pull focus on the lenses. So.
Yeah. And also, I think the favorite that year used really super wide, so we were messing around with that to make it look even weirder and creepier.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think the shot on Manveer was like a 35. I don't know what the wide camera was, probably like a 20 mil or something, kind of looking back and seeing the whole car. And then Swan was probably on an 85 or a 50 or something like that. But it really worked out. I'm glad it really cut well. I never know. I shoot these things and I don't really know until post hits, how it's gonna turn out. So seeing the final version in the film was really nice to see.
Yeah, and it was easy to cut because I then just put it into multicam setting in Premiere, so then I could do all the cameras at once.
Yeah, I don't think we had time code on these cameras, but they all have scratch audio, so you're probably able to sync it up all using audio wave file. And then we had I think the boom pole was sitting in the front seat.
Yeah.
So we had pretty good, I think we had pretty good.
Lavaliers.
Yeah, lavaliers. So it's a lot of technology, but it was a lot of inexpensive technology that really pulled something quite complicated. So I think that, it's a lesson for people, you don't have to do it the Hollywood way. It's nice if you do it. That's the best way to do it. It's the most beautiful way to do it. But you can also, with a limited budget, if you think creatively, can pull off quite and complicated things on a smaller scale, just because the quality of the cheaper stuff is so good now. you know? I think they just shot The Creator on, not, I don't know if it was exclusively, but they shot it all on like an FX3
Right.
camera. I mean, it's like not much bigger than these A7 IIIs, and you know, that's a huge Hollywood movie. So, you know,
And that's the point, is to get your things made. I mean, people get annoyed when they're like, oh, you can shoot on an iPhone, but the technology.
if it's a good story, if it's fun. There was that film, I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but it was a brilliant film shot on an iPhone. If the story's good, who cares? I mean, the always yeah, tangerine. That's what it was. I wanted to say like mandarin or orange or something like. If the story is good, people follow it. You know, it's sort of like, you know, I work in a lot of documentaries, and I say to people, make sure the audio's good, because your shot can be out of focus, the white balance can be wrong. You know, like all these things can be wrong. But if the story's good and the audio's clear, people can follow. You know, the audience is very forgiving if you're telling a good story. So a lot of people get caught up in the gear, get caught up in, you know, doing it the right way or the wrong way. But, you know, just make it
really annoying when somebody shows up and spends like 2 hours unloading little tiny things, and you're like, we just need the camera and we can go, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's always dependent on what you're doing, but yes, it can be. Finding the right size of crew for the project you're doing is very important, because it's good to have everything you need, but it's also good to be small and nimble if that's required. So it's kind of, you know, you gotta.
That's one of the things with shooting 35. Like, we got this grant from Panavision, and for a lot of, if you're students, you can apply for this grant. But then we ended up with a truck full of gear, and suddenly needed to double our crew, and we needed people who knew the names for everything, like not just fellow students.
Yeah, I mean, Panavision gear is no joke equipment. You know, it's got some of the most beautiful lenses on earth, but I've never met a heavier camera than a Panavision ship. So it's not like swinging around a little A7S III. It's a different beast. So yeah.
Well, another thing we did was we had a tech day 2 or 3 days ahead, so we didn't have to waste the time of the actors. And if anything, that we wanted to modify anything, we had some bumper days to go back to the rental house or whatever.
Right, yeah, that was really smart of you. You kind of created a couple-day project. I don't usually get a tech day. We learned a lot of things. I mean, like when we went with Manveer and Swan, we were able to just rig the cameras where they were before. We had, you know, we had this issue where the camera was this big, but the windshield was like this, and it needed to have a monitor on it to transmit the signal to your wireless. So we were able to get a long enough HDMI and put the monitor somewhere else, and still, like, in a safe way, so it wouldn't move around while we were driving, but still get the signal back to you. So like we figured that out on the tech day. I think we were able to get some extra stuff, like maybe longer HDMI cables or longer power cables or something that just made it work better. And that was really wise. And yeah, I think you had other days in the schedule. It was a little while ago. I don't remember everything about it.
Yeah. Then we went back and shot the extra Halloween stuff at the farm.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a great day. I think were we using a gimbal on that day? I can't remember.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. It's a good time.
Yeah, the gimbal's another great resource if you're working on a low budget to do a lot of different types of.
I mean, what I love so much is, you know, you used to have to get the big movies to do anything, and now you can get like the Ronin RS3s, which you can put you know, like I said, technology's amazing. Take this tiny camera, put it on a tiny gimbal, put it in autofocus now, and like
which was like
you're by yourself getting like absolutely epic stuff. You know, there are certain things, if you want to do a night exterior with 100 extras and explosions, yeah, you have to do it the big way. But if you're telling an intimate story that's small and these tools make sense for it, you can do incredible things with. I don't like to work by myself, but I could do some of it by myself these days. You know, you know, so it's pretty lonely to work by yourself. And also, like, working in New York City, who parks the car when you're unloading the gear? It gets a little
right. Yeah, we got towed on one shoot because the PA came back in and the parking signs were misinterpreted. But luckily, the gear was all in the location.
That's good. Yeah, as a PA, I parked one place that was legal for a little while, and then it became illegal while we were there. And we came back and the car was gone. and I thought someone stole it. It didn't have anything in it, but we had spent hours trying to get it back from the, in town on the west side, and it was a nightmare. So, it happens. These are the things you learn, and you don't make the same mistake a second time, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Oh, so this year Diwali is a school holiday in New York.
yeah, it's been that way for a few years, I think. I'm not really sure, but I think it's lovely. I mean, I think we should always be celebrating diversity and all these things. You told me about that, and I wanted to look it up because I was like, I worked on Diwal'Oween, but I don't actually know that much about the history of Diwali. And man, it is there's a lot of different people in the world who celebrate it slightly differently, and I think it's one of the things that's so lovely is the fact that they're celebrating it and embracing like all these parts of history and religion that don't normally get noticed in the Western Hemisphere. So it's great. I'm all for it. Thumbs up.
You have your Halloween costume picked out.
Yeah. I have 2 kids. So my 7-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my 7-year-old daughter, and sort of my 2-year-old are really into Spider-Man, into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, nice.
All decided to be a different Spider-Man from the Spider-Verse.
Oh, that's cool.
So my son is wearing like classic Spider-Man pajama suit. I thought I'd get him like an outfit that he could wear not just on Halloween. He's in love with it. It's gonna be Gwen, and my wife is gonna be kind of like a classic Spider-Woman, and I'm gonna be Spider-Man with like the Venom Spider-Man, like the black outfit, the symbiote before he became Venom. Sorry, who?
Spider Pig.
Oh yeah, well, Spider Pig's a good costume, but I couldn't find that, and I wouldn't be sure how to pull that off. Those are great movies. God, so well written.
Yeah, that was another fun thing because we had all the costumes on set, so people from the crew kept grabbing them and putting on masks and stuff.
Oh yeah, you remember that? Yeah.
Okay, so any other thoughts or tips for people who are?
You know what? Obviously we've talked about being friendly and sociable and meeting people. It's, be yourself, don't be someone you're not, just, it's going to shine through. Be earnest, but also do not quit. If you want to have a successful career in this industry, you just have to not quit. It's hard. It's not an easy road. There's no ladder to climb that you don't make yourself. So I just say to anybody who really cares, you're having a good time or you're having a hard time, just keep at it. Because if you stop, you're never going to succeed. And if you don't quit, it's just sort of a probability thing. Eventually something's going to break and it's going to work out. So, that's my advice. Yeah.
Never quit, guys.
Never. If you care about it, if you don't care about it, you should get out of it because it's a crazy industry. Trying to schedule anything in my life is basically impossible, but I'm glad this worked out.
Yeah. And you.